Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're painting the World 3 loading screen from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. Now this is the third one in this series that I'm doing, and I've been really looking forward to painting Bright Savannah. It's really gorgeous colors. The background starts with a light yellow and fades into an orange, and then kind of a magenta, and then kind of a violet at the top. And it's really beautiful with the big baobab trees and the different shapes that are formed. So on my palette, I'm going to start by mixing up kind of a lighter yellow, so yellow and titanium white, kind of an orange, like a mid-orange. I'll put some magenta in for the magenta color, and then I'll mix up kind of a bluish violet for the top of the sky. On my palette, I have that primary yellow with some titanium white, and there's not much in there, and it's just mostly because the yellow is very transparent, and I want to make sure I cover the canvas pretty good. I took some of the pure primary yellow and the primary magenta to make an orange, and then I took some magenta and cyan to make the violet, and then I just have magenta by itself. So I'm starting with my lightest color, in this case it's yellow, and I'm using a big brush so I can work quickly, and I'm going to start towards the bottom. And I'm just going to brush this all the way across the base of the canvas, and I'm not too worried about down here because it's going to be solid carbon black later, but I don't want to have to worry about adding some more yellow to it to cover up any blank canvas I missed. Like if I have kind of like a hill that comes down, I don't want to have any of this showing through where I need it to be yellow. So I'm just going to paint the yellow in, and as I go upwards, I'm just going to let my brush run out of paint so it feathers it onto the canvas like this. And then I can just take some orange and lay that down here. So once I have a nice layer of the orange, I can just start to blend it down into the yellow. And sometimes I do kind of this wiggle to get just like a little bit down, and then I'll just go back across to get rid of those lines. Sometimes when I do these gradients, they don't quite work out the first time. I was painting the orange and it got into the yellow where it wasn't dry, so it kind of got splotchy. But the great thing is with acrylic is you can repaint over the top. So I've let this dry really well. It's not tacky at all, and I'm just going to redo the gradient on top. I've changed the yellow to be a little bit lighter, and I lightened up the purple just a little bit because it looks very dark. Going back to my sketch, my next layer is this really far away mountain range one. So I have something here for it, and there's another one that starts to come up here on the edge. This particular world has a lot of space in it. Like World 2, there's a lot of mountains that kind of fill up a lot of the base. But on this one, you can see sky like all the way down to the front layer. So I really want to make sure I capture that to show that distance and that openness of the savanna. So I'm going to be really careful when I start to place these different layers. And I'm going to be using chalk pastel to draw it in first. In case I make a mistake, I can erase with a wet towel. But it doesn't really show up over the yellow so well, so I do have an orange. This doesn't erase as cleanly. It kind of leaves like smudges sometimes of the color I use. So I'm going to be very careful when I use these color ones. The color for this faraway layer is kind of a light orange. Now I could have made an orange and added titanium white to it, but I had a lot of this color left and I had little bits of these colors left. So I took the light yellow I had, which was the primary yellow with titanium white, added some of the orange, but there was a lot of magenta in this orange, so it kind of turned a little pink. So then I added more primary yellow to it, and I started to get this really cool funky orange, which is great because it doesn't exist anywhere in the spectrum that I've made, so it won't blend in with this background. Once I put these colors on, I thought it was way too bright. I feel like it needs to kind of tone down because we're moving into black as we get closer to the foreground. So I took this base color that I had and added some burnt sienna into it to make it a little bit more neutral, a little bit more brown. So I'm going to repaint these with that new color. The next layer is a stone arch, and I was struggling with like the roundness of it from the game version, and it really reminded me of the delicate arch out in Utah. So I pulled up a picture and drew that for fun to kind of maybe help me figure out how to draw the one in game, but I really like the asymmetricalness of this. It makes it look very natural, very organic. So I'm actually just going to stick with it. I'm going to use this as my base color. I mixed more magenta and more burnt sienna into it, and I'm going to fill that in. And then over here I drew like another small rock that I'm going to mix even more magenta and burnt sienna in to make it even darker, and then fill this in. My next layer is somewhere between this color and then carbon black. I don't want it too close to either one or it will blend in. So I was doing some tests down here to make sure it was good, and I think it's a good distance in between both. It's not too similar to the last layer and it's not too similar to carbon black. So I'm going to take a brush and start to fill it in on these baobab trees that I started to sketch in with a chalk pastel. And the leaves aren't exactly quite right, but I kind of just sort of did like a small area to block them in so I knew where they would go. And then also down here on the ground, I did just draw a line, but I'm going to take a brush and bring some grass upwards. My last layer is this carbon black, and I had planned for more space between the two layers of grass, but once I put the carbon black down, it just felt like there was too much of the last layer showing. So I just brought the black up a little bit more so they were a bit more in line with each other. I had drawn in the tree a few times. I had started by drawing one of the other baobabs, the big sweet potato shaped one, but I felt like this fit better, and plus it had cooler leaves, so I went with it instead. And just like this last layer, I kind of just roughly blocked in where the leaves are going to go. I didn't quite draw them all out individually. I originally drew Diddy sitting on the ground, kind of like he's starting to move across it, and in the other two that I've done in this series, I've had the characters running across the bottom. But because there's so much open space and there's such a perfect spot right here, I think it would be nice to have Diddy kind of swinging from the tree. So I originally drew it, but it was too big, and so I drew myself a little line to know kind of where I want him to sit. This is the line where I'm going to make sure that's the bottom of his bottommost foot, and I can't really have him any bigger than that just because it looks kind of unnatural for the size of the tree. I did really like my drawing, so it was kind of sad I had to erase it, but I'm going to redraw it and just make sure everything is perfect, and this time it's the right size. So I've redrawn him smaller, and I really like the look of it. It kind of makes the piece feel more proportionate and more like an actual picture instead of just like pasted here on the tree. And something that really solidified my decision is I took a picture of it on my phone, and I went into Photoshop and I made a layer on top and just colored in Diddy with like a solid black and a solid red. And then I had that, and I could scale it and move it and kind of like play around and see where I wanted it to go. And once I was happy with it, I sort of saw like how much smaller it was than the original one I drew. And so I erased it and drew it that small, and I think it looks better this way. So I'm taking a liquid black, a liquid carbon black acrylic paint, and I'm going to fill in the legs, the tail, the arms, and then the face. And then the shirt and the hat I'm going to fill in with the liquid white. And once that's all dry, I'll take some magenta, like the magenta up here, and fill in the hat and the shirt. And I'm also going to go back over my name, because if nothing else in the painting is white, this shouldn't be white either. And we're done! We have the World 3 loading screen from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a poster or a phone case, or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.